We are now live, so I can do a roll call. Oh, well, how about we report out a closed session first, and then I'll do a roll call.
Yeah, so the council is reporting out of closed session. We have no reportable actions coming out of closed session. So Amy, let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Sure. Councilmember Berlant.
I'm here.
Councilmember Amara is currently absent but expected in the meeting. Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
Present.
Riddell Harris.
Here.
And Mayor Spokley.
Here. And if everyone would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. Let's see, the next item on our agenda, while Amy invites our Chamber and Downtown and Old Town Business Association leaders into the meeting, is our COVID-19 economic recovery update. And now Jackie actually gets to talk. So Jackie, as typical, we'll kind of kick off with your report for us. Good evening.
Maybe.
I see April. April's ready to talk.
She's still working on that text, Daniel. All right, let's go with April. April is up and unmuted and looking like she's ready to go. Hi, April.
Hello.
How's our Downtown Business Association doing?
Well, I think we're doing pretty well. I don't believe anything has happened since Jackie reported on the downtown outdoor dining last time. I know you have an extremely long calendar agenda, and I would basically add that Downtown Business Association is working on providing outdoor music on Fridays and Saturdays. We're booking that with help from the Auburn Arts Commission, and planning our co-op in June on the 17th. Yeah, and it's not exactly COVID recovery, but we're eyeballing June 21st, a Monday, for the umbrella sponsor celebration. So if we hear that there's no conflicts with anybody on that, that's what we'll be going with. And I will just cut it at that.
Thank you, April. So I've gotten lots of folks who've reached out about how beautiful the sculpture turned out. Are you getting the same feedback, I'm sure, on the umbrella sculpture?
Oh, on the umbrellas? Yes, a lot. Because we've had some, they were installed a week ago Saturday, and we were down there Saturday kind of tweaking a few of them. And it's just kind of nonstop dribble of people coming in and looking up and taking pictures and oohing and awing. And there was a nice car full of people that were from the East Coast, 2 cars actually from the East Coast, and they asked about it, and real good response. And it really works. It's a lot cooler down there in both senses of the word.
Excellent, excellent. We'll jump over. Jackie, we're going to save you for last so you can prepare your remarks for all of us. Christine, you want to go ahead and give us an update on Old Town?
Yes. Good. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Finally got my video to work and unmuted both at the same time. We have had lots of good things happening in Old Town. We have some movement on our COVID recovery project. We do have furniture and barriers on the way so that we can do our community project there. And we will be adding those. I think that the furniture is due to be here even before the barriers. I think that we're aiming for the week of June 8th and around there to start actually installing everything. So we're pretty excited about that happening. And on a side note, we just had our first co-op last Thursday, and as far as I can tell, a good time was had by all. Our vendors are all reporting that they did really well, and we're very excited to be back in Old Town, back in Auburn, back at community events. So that was a lot of fun.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Jackie, how are you?
I am fantastic. I'm sorry for my delay. I was in the middle of a 4th of July meeting.
Ah,
So
multitasking.
July-
I love it.
4th of July is in full swing. We're excited to be gathering together for a parade in the morning and then fireworks in the evening. We, as far as COVID, have gotten most of the structures up. We have some extending to do in front of Ninja Sushi to extend their structure a little bit more and get rid of the easy ups. I went and bought 20 boxes of 48-foot LED lights this weekend to decorate them all so that they all look as delightful or semi as delightful as Monkey Cat has done with theirs, and Ale House as well. They were the forefront of this project. I'll keep saying that. So we're really excited to light up downtown and Old Town, if we can find some spots for Old Town as well, and just light up Auburn and make it as friendly as possible for our visitors. Yes, the umbrellas are fantastic, and we have people coming in here almost daily to talk about how amazing they are. And every time I walk out the door, there's somebody taking a picture of them. So April, congratulations. They're amazing. It was worth listening to all the banging for the building. I love the way they look, and they're fantastic. Other than that, we're just moving forward. We had our first mixer last week during the co-op. And we had the best attendance we've had in probably 10 years at a mixer. So it's really exciting to see people getting together. I want to thank John and Menjel for coming out. It was really nice to see some city presence at the mixer. And we really, and of course, council members as well, but council members are always my favorite, but it's really nice to see city staff at the mixers and their support for the chamber. So we really appreciate it.
It was a busy night.
It was a very
The
busy
mixer
night.
and then the co-op, yeah. And that was, well, I think there was a movie at the station
At the
house too,
station,
so.
yeah, it was. Unfortunately, everybody seems to plan all their stuff at the same time, so.
Old Town Pizza at the fairgrounds was a great location. It was really enjoyable to see everyone there.
It was.
Mhm.
I mean, I know it's Matt's favorite, but it's my favorite too.
It's our
It was
little
great.
hometown secret, little hometown secret out there.
It's not really a secret anymore, though.
No, it's not. It was great. Very good. It was great to see so many folks at
Yeah.
both events. The co-op too. That was it was great to see so many people. Totally different crowds. I'll just say that. Very different.
I will say, I
Daniel
wish I
knows.
could.
Daniel.
I wish I could attend the co-ops, but now being in this position, there's no possible way. So I hope that maybe one year we can figure it out and not have them on the same night, because I do love the co-op. But we'll see.
All right, any other questions for downtown, Old Town business districts or the chamber?
I just have one really quick question. So Jackie, have you spent all the funds that were granted to you from the county and the city, or are the monies already spoken for? Or?
For the most part, it's spoken for. We do have a little bit left to decorate the restaurant structures from the Placer Community Foundation grant and the Locke Family Fund. And we're going to work our way through those to see how much we can get and how much we can find on sale, and really beautify those structures that we've already put in place.
I will tell you that Royal Indian's really pleased with the structure there. So I'm very happy that we were able to work all that out. But their people are using it, and you know, Club Car too. So that's all working out.
Yeah, every time I drive past there in the evening, it's completely full. So it's really nice to see. I think we just have to figure out something with the plants. And figure those
Daniel,
out.
bring the truck. Daniel, bring the truck.
I'm not
We'll
going to
see
drive
what
by
happens
them. We
with the
can
plan.
water them.
Danny, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to ask to see if our city manager knew from working with the county, but from watching the numbers, it looks like we're on track tomorrow to move to the orange tier. I just wanted to see if you had heard anything official that tomorrow is the day.
No, I haven't seen anything official, but as of last week, all the tracking, everything, I was in multiple meetings, so we should be on our way to orange, and then in 2 weeks, we'll be into green.
Well, in 2 weeks there, yeah, I was gonna say.
It's over in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions from the council? Thank you all for joining us. Appreciate your updates. You all have a great evening, and we'll jump into the rest of our agenda here.
Thank you, everybody.
Next item on our agenda is the agenda approval. This is a time set aside for the council members and or the public to speak or to ask for removal, postponement, or change of the listed sequence of the agenda items. The agenda will be approved by a roll call of the council. John?
Mayor and council, staff isn't ready for number 8 to go yet, but we do need to schedule a special meeting of the council. I'm throwing out either Thursday or Friday of this week for us to bring this thing back. So if the council can tell us when, if you can get consensus on a day, and we'd probably be looking around like 5:30-ish for a special meeting, one item.
So this will be a special meeting, obviously off our normal calendar. If my fellow council members could please check their calendars, let John know whether Thursday evening or Friday will work. Friday evening before a 3-day holiday might be a little tough for some, but if you could please get your availability back to John at your earliest convenience, that would be great.
John, I'm just going to tell you I can do Thursday or Friday at 5:30. So I'm not going to text you.
Perfect. All right. Do I hear a motion on the agenda approval minus?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I would like to request that we move items 9 and 10 before the public hearing. I know that we have people that are listening specifically for the shack tiles as well as the EEC item. And so I just thought it might be good to put those before the public hearing so that those folks don't have to wait around if they don't want to.
Do I hear a second for that movement? I
Second.
don't have a
I'll second
plan
it.
for it. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Amy, can we do a quick roll call vote on that?
Sure. Councilmember Brilliant,
Aye.
Amara,
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris,
Aye.
and Mayor Spokley.
Yes.
Mayor
Thank
Spokley,
you.
is it okay, real quick, I'm just, in case the public is watching and doesn't have the agenda in front of them, I wanted to let them know that item 8, the one that was removed from tonight's meeting, is the 2020 sludge dewatering upgrades project. And 9 and 10 that were moved are the Streetscape History Art Advisory Committee tile recommendation, and number 10 is a follow-up request from the Economic Development Commission, just for clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy, I appreciate that. All right, let's move on to our consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion with a roll call vote. There will be no separate discussions on these items unless persons request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the motion to approve the consent calendar. I am going ahead and jump out and request that item number 4 be removed from the consent calendar. And any other council members have any actions or requests for removal before we have John run down a quick summary of the consent calendar? All right, John, would you please?
Yeah, Mayor and council, a couple of items. Item 1 are the minutes from 2 meetings, April 12th and April 26th. Number 2 is just our investment summary, where you get to see investing in the state local agency investment fund doesn't really produce a whole lot of money. Item 3 is a comebacker from the previous council meeting. This is the employee and elected officials health and welfare benefits policy. We took the suggestions that were made at the last meeting. We've allowed for a cumulative benefit as long as it doesn't exceed the monthly amounts during any of the calendar years. Item number 5 is a professional services agreement with Next Gen Utility Management. This has to do with the sludge dewatering project. This is for management and inspection of that project, and that is the consent calendar.
Thank you very much, John. If you wouldn't mind just doing a quick overview of item number 4, because I think the council will still act on it. I need to recuse myself from that one.
Item number 4 is a utility agreement between the city and Caltrans. This has to do with the roundabout project that's going in at Lincoln and Borland. This is a standard agreement. There are some aspects of the project that deal with us. We have a sewer line in the project. They also are going into city right of way. So essentially, this is a very standard agreement that has to do simply with utilities. There are reciprocal benefits that accrue to both, and staff is recommending for this agreement to move forward.
Great, thank you very much, John. Do we have any questions from the council on the consent calendar, minus item number 4? Do
I'll
we
move
have
that
any?
we approve the consent calendar without item 4.
I'll second.
that.
I think we had Daniel with the motion and Rachel with the second. Amy, do we have any public comment? Should I open up public comment period?
We do not have public comment.
All right, hearing that we have no public comment, we'll go ahead and close public comment period. And any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Hearing none. Amy, why don't we go ahead and do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Berlin,
Aye.
Amara,
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris,
Aye.
and Mayor Spokley.
Yes, thank you very much. So item number 4, I pulled off. My company does work with Caltrans, and some of that work does include some assistance with this particular project. So I'm going to recuse myself, and I'm going to turn off my mic, my video, and request that Amy or John, somebody let me know when we're done so I can jump back into the meeting. Sandy, I will turn this over to you to kind of lead the discussion if you don't mind. John can help you with that.
Okay, thank you. I can practice being mayor.
There you go.
Madam Mayor, if there's no, because the mayor pulled this item off to recuse
I
himself.
have questions though.
Oh, are there? Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
I do.
was gonna make a motion, but
No, real quick, Madam Vice Mayor, if I can. John, on this,
Thank you, Councilman Berlant.
sorry to interrupt you, Councilwoman Dowden Calvillo, but I was going to pull it regardless.
okay.
I just wanted to be clear on the $80,000 that's estimated for the cost. It wasn't super clear in the staff report who's covering that, because the following sentence says that any facilities in conflict will be paid for by Caltrans, but it doesn't clearly connect the 80,000 of improvements that is estimated within the city's right of way. So what is the cost, if any, to the city on this item?
Yeah, no, Dr. Scaradella hopefully is being led into the meeting, and Chris can absolutely answer the nitty gritty of that. So let me turn it over to Chris.
Yeah, so thank you, council member. The expected cost for the city is estimated at about 80,000, including, which is about 20 linear feet of sewer pipe and 2 sewer manholes. Really the lion's share of the sewer relocations in the area, amounting to more about 500,000 is Caltrans covered cost for that, besides their main big project. So there was follow-up and conference calls between city staff and Caltrans staff to figure out the extent of the liability and who was responsible for what portion. And that's how the split ended up coming down. Basically, all items that were in conflict with the project that had to be relocated, Caltrans covered the cost. There's some additional work that the city requested to be done at the same time that's betterment to the city sewer. Really the section running north up Lincoln, which has been a requested extension from some nearby development of property at the intersection.
So Chris, just to be clear, we are asking to have that work improved so that $80,000 covers the work we want to do in this. It just happens to be in the project area.
That is correct.
Okay. And then do we have any information, and maybe this is for the city manager, but so Chris, not to put you on the spot, do we have any idea, since this item has last been discussed at this council, on where Caltrans is in negotiations with our property owners within our city limits, the land that they're working to acquire?
You know, I haven't gotten the specifics. I can tell you that with all parties, including the property owners, we haven't heard anything. I know the city attorney was working on it, but it looks like all things are absolutely moving forward. We have not heard from the Woodland family at all. And Chris, I don't know, have you heard of anything along that?
Yeah, I have not been privy to any specific discussions with the property owners, but it's been indicated to city staff that Caltrans is looking to certify the right-of-way towards the end of this month, really after the city action. So that tells me that whatever property issues or discussions and negotiations were going on have likely wrapped up if they're going to certify right-of-way.
So, and maybe this is for the city attorney, talking to the family myself, they have not settled with Caltrans, and Caltrans has put their last final offer of somewhere in the neighborhood of $19,000 for that acre or so parcel with a billboard that is their seniors only source of income. So I'm just curious, in this in a Caltrans project like this, does our city have any ability to stand up and support our residents who are having their land taken from them without Caltrans negotiating a fair and equitable price? Or is it because it's a state highway and completely within their right of way that we as a city have no legal authority to assist our residents?
So certainly the dispute itself is between the property owner and Caltrans project in that area, given the ownership of the road and the location of the property in question. But I think the city has taken a position before. Certainly city has been providing information to the attorney for the Woodlands on Public Records Act requests. I haven't received information from their attorney in several months now either. So taking a position and being involved, I don't think there's anything that precludes that, but the dispute is between Caltrans and the property owner.
The reason I bring it up for this council is just, again, this has been a discussion in front of the council a number of years ago, and I think we somewhat failed to be able to participate in the planning of it. I've shared my concerns with the former city manager and this city manager of the fact that within our city, we're going to impact traffic flow on an uphill blind corner. Yes, they'll be straightening some of it out, but it requires them to take property that belongs to our residents who are seniors who rely on the billboard that sits on that land, and to not have us have any say in the project really concerns me. But tonight's item, the reason I asked about the money was I'm not supportive of us having to pay 1 cent into a project that doesn't truly better the entire community and those residents that are being impacted. But it sounds like the requested amount here and this agreement is really for the betterment of the city, is not for the betterment of the project. So I just wanted to bring that up. I realized that not everybody was on this council several years ago when it was initially discussed and direction was given to staff to bring it back to the council for discussion, and that never occurred. So we've kind of lost that opportunity to do so, but appreciate the answer to the questions, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Berland. With that being said, lawsuit aside, I'm not very familiar with the specifics of that. I know there's some signage, billboard issues. But I don't have specifics on the lawsuit. But I personally think it's a wonderful project. I think it's going to make 49 safe with the amount of traffic going down. And when traffic is coming up the hill back into Auburn from the confluence, there is a blind corner where people are stopped because of a light, and it's extremely dangerous for rear enders. And I think this will help, and it'll beautify that area. Roundabouts are keep traffic flowing. And I think it's quite honestly, from my perspective, I think it's a wonderful asset, and it'll help our electric buses going down, the shuttles going down and up. And I'm just very supportive of this project. With that being said, I see other council people have their hands up. Alice, what would you like to say?
Yes, I just wanted to say that for the purposes of this item, truly, I do see the benefit for the sewer relocation work for the city overall. I mean, it's a significant cost savings. So just speaking to this particular piece of it, I'm in support because I do see an overall impact, a positive impact for our community on the sewer relocation. Lots of dollars saved, so.
Thank you. And Rachel, did you have anything to add, or do I have a motion?
I just think that it's good for us to get economies of scale whenever there's someone that we can partner with to get some of the work done that we need to already do in a cheaper way. I'm definitely in support of that.
Okay. And do I have a motion?
I'll move to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the Caltrans utility agreement for sewer relocation at the intersection of Highway 49, Borland Avenue and Lincoln Way.
I'll second.
Okay, and Amy, would you take roll, please?
Councilmember Berland.
Do you want to take public comment?
Oh, any public comment?
I don't have any public comment for this.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Aye.
Okay, so that was Councilmember Berland's vote. Amara?
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo?
Aye.
Riddell Harris?
Aye.
And Mayor Spokley recused.
Thank you. It passes.
I text him to let him know to come back to the meeting.
Good job, Sandy. Good job, Vice Mayor Amara.
Something passed.
All righty. Again, thank you, Vice Mayor Amara, for stepping in. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and move on to our adjusted agenda. Well, no, let's do public comment. Sorry. We're inching along here in our agenda. Public comment is next up. This is the time provided so that the public can speak to the council on any items not on the agenda. Please make your comments brief as possible. The council cannot act on these items not included on the agenda. However, the items will automatically refer to staff for future consideration. Council members shall have an option to speak for 30 seconds or more if on items that are not on the agenda at this time. Do we have any council members that would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Councilwoman Dowden Calvillo was quick with a hand, so she's up.
Yes. Just really quickly, in case you're getting questions like I am, there's construction in the canyon. You might have seen it or heard it, or someone might have mentioned to you. PCWA is actually constructing some pads to put some backup generators. It's on the road down to the PCWA pump house. So those backup generators will be there for a PSP event. So just want to let folks know, because I know when I'm out there running, I get questions asking if I knew what was going on. So I asked, and that's what I found out. So I think that they should be done with the project by the fall, but I need to follow up with PCWA directly and get more information. And when I get that, I will share that with the council.
Great, thank you very much for that update. Any other council members have items? I will say, because I drive by it often and I've seen quite a few families stopping, getting out of their car to admire all the goats that are down on Virginia Street. That's part of the grant dollars that our Chief Spencer, our Fire Chief Spencer, was able to secure for some of the shaded fuel break or undergrowth work that's going on. And if you haven't been out there to see it, drive by. There's a couple of dogs that are out there with them, and it's just fun to see so many goats in one small area out there in the canyon, just decimating the vegetation. So it's all good.
And you can hear them eating. If you listen, you just hear this.
Yeah. Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to highlight that Pioneer, our electricity provider, will be making 100% renewable electricity rate available on June 7th. So anyone who's interested in purchasing green power for their home or business can contact Pioneer and sign up for their 100% or Green 100 product, which is 100% renewable. And that's it.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Councilwoman, Vice Mayor Morrow.
Thank you. I just wanted to raise a quick awareness for Chris Didier. I think everyone probably on the council received an email. He's the father of the son that Zach Didier, I think he was in Rockland High School, an A student, and he lost his life to an overdose of fentanyl. And there's a rally, and I just think it's worthwhile to at least raise an awareness. If you can't go down, June 4th, there'll be a rally at the state Capitol building at 12 noon. But I just think it's something that we should have an awareness about. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor Spokley.
Yeah, I think we've all received that tragic event. So thank you for bringing that up, Council or Vice Mayor Amara. Seeing no other hands, we will go ahead and jump into our council business items 9 and 10 that were moved up in a previous action of the council. So first up would be the Streetscape Historic and Arts Advisory Committee tile recommendations.
Really quick, just for the record, Mayor Spokley, I'm going to note that we didn't have any general public comment either during this meeting.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. Keeping them straight and narrow.
On the streetscape item, I was under the impression the chair, Chris Packard, was going to be here for this item. Is it
No,
you?
it's going to be me.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
I'll be presenting on behalf of the chair who had another
Councilman
comment.
Cavill will be presenting tonight. So Alice, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'll just keep this very brief because you already have before you the staff report and the recommendation from SHAC, which is to approve the funding of 7 tiles to be inserted into our streetscape. Several of them are historic tiles. We've got that were nominated by the committee itself. Every year we fund the committee $2,500, and they use this along with the additional funds from the other tiles to help fund these historic tiles where there are no folks left to support them. The historic tiles are for Robert Gordon, William Gwen, and William Henry McDaniel Jr. And then there's also 4 non-historic tiles that receive public nominations and that are paid for by their nominating entities. Those are Henry Starkey, who is nominated and funded by the United Auburn Indian Community, Ty Rowe, who is nominated and paid for by the Hillman Foundation, Scott Lindgren, who is nominated and funded by the Endurance Capital of the World Committee, and the Veterans Day Parade, which is nominated and funded by private individuals. So essentially, we're just requesting a formal approval. The money is there, and I think that we would go ahead and do the insertions in the summer, and there's always a little party and so forth to recognize and celebrate those that are getting tiles. So I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Councilwoman, do we have any questions for Alice on this matter?
Can I make a motion to approve?
I don't see any questions. Let me, before we do a motion, real quickly ask if there's any public comment on this item, Amy?
There is not.
We have no public comments. So yes, please, I
Okay.
welcome a motion.
Motion to approve the 7 tiles to be engraved in the streetscape.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. I assume no discussion. So Amy, please go ahead and call roll.
Councilmember Berlant,
Aye.
Amara,
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris,
Aye.
and Mayor Spokely.
Yes. Thank you all. Appreciate that. Thank you, Alice, for that report.
Thank you very much.
Next item up would be the follow-up budget request from the Economic Development Commission, EDC.
Yes, for this item, I have Marjorie Cook coming into the meeting. As you'll recall, at a previous meeting, the committees and commissions reported on their budget, and the council requested EDC come back with more information. So Marjorie will be handling this presentation.
And Marjorie is the chair of our commissions that I actually sit on as well with Councilwoman Riddell Harris. Marjorie, good to see you tonight.
Hello, everybody. Good night to you as well. I just got rejoined, so it cut me out on my end for a minute. I don't know if you guys could see that.
We have you. You're good.
Last council meeting, you guys had asked me to send you some more information. I sent that to Amy, who sent it on to you. So I guess at this point, do you have any questions for me?
So I see Councilwoman Dowden Calvillo with her hand up.
Yes, first, I just wanted to thank you so very much for all the detailed information in this work plan. I truly appreciate it. This is a substantial document that really tells me how you're expecting to spend the monies. And so I feel much more comfortable with the request at this point in time. The only comment I really had was, I appreciate that there are the funding of various events throughout the community. And there's a little bit of cross-pollination because, of course, the Endurance Capital of the World Committee also provides some funding events, specifically with regards to Western States and Tevis Cup. So I just kind of note that, I guess, that there's some, they may be coming to you, or I don't know if we're funding different things like the dinner versus, other things, but just we may want to kind of coordinate. And I know that John is involved with both of our committees and he can kind of help facilitate that too. What I wouldn't want to see happen is for example, we're both funding, the same amount for dinner so that there's double the funding that we don't need. That's really what I'm just getting at.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. And of course, all events, we only send a recommendation on to the council. And so I'm sure that either if somebody on our EDC wasn't aware of that, the council would be aware of it. And at that point can either approve or not approve, anything that we have sent forward.
I will comment on that because it has come up before where we've had folks simultaneously requesting support from various committees and commissions. And from an EDC standpoint, historically, we've always said, okay, this seems to be an athletic event. We'll reach out to the appropriate committee to make sure that we're not double funding. So in fact, in some cases, we've said, okay, they requested, I'm just going to make numbers up, but they requested $5,000. We at the EDC gave them $2,500, and the Economic Endurance, the Endurance Committee has given them $2,500. So we try to coordinate as closely as possible. And typically all of these requests, as we all know, come back to the council. So we're able to kind of compare notes at that point. So good comment. I think we're doing a pretty good job of watching to make sure that we're not doubling up on these requests.
Yeah, and I want to add, we also do have on our on the request for funding, there is a question as if they've requested any other budget or any other monies from anybody else in the city and what it's being used for. So that budget submittal is supposed to be part of the submittal process.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I was just back on last year and we didn't have any events, of course, so there was no issue. Didn't present itself. So thank you very much.
I see Councilman Berlant has his end up.
Yeah, this isn't a specific question, but just commenting on what was just discussed. I'll mention that in 2019, Councilman Amara sitting on the EDC and myself sitting at that point on the Economic Capital Committee, we got the two committees together to have this exact discussion because there is overlap. However, and maybe tonight's not the right place for this, but I do think that this group the council should have a discussion of the policy of approving these events, because unless I'm mistaken, I don't think the Endurance Capital Committee's funding of events comes back to our approval. Neither do events that the city manager approves. Neither do events that the Arts Commission approves. So I do question the requirement, and I use that word because I don't know if it's in an ordinance or a policy, of why do events specific to the Economic Development Committee have to come back to City Council for approval versus the city manager, since the dollar amount is under his threshold. So I just throw that out there, that I think we are inconsistent. And if we are going to discuss increasing it, we're going to become much busier in approving $1,000 here, $1,000 there. And from my personal view, again, we can have this discussion later if it's not appropriate time. I don't think there needs to be a decision at this group. I think we can set the policy and let our city staff be the deciding factor, is at least my 2 cents here. But Marjorie, thank you for an update. I too agree with Councilwoman down in Calvillo. This report is much more thorough and gives a lot more. I didn't get a chance to note it at the last meeting, but in talking with our city manager, my biggest question for him was, where will the money come from? And it sounds like city staff will come back with a recommendation for the budget. It's not our decision tonight to make that approval for that amount, but so appreciate more details of what it is you would do with that amount. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you very much. Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I had 2 quick things. One of the things that came up at our last economic development meeting was around the idea of equity with these events and making sure that everyone has an equal chance of getting funding and knows that the funding is available, because it tends to be, if you don't necessarily know that the city has this money or know somebody who's within the city committees, that you might not know that this is available. So one of the things that I would like to suggest is that we open up either quarterly or every 6 months, just put some kind of notice out that we have this funding available and that it's a fair process where we select the ones that we would like to fund in a fair and equitable way, versus it being first come, first serve of whoever happens to know that we give out this money through these committees. So if we could maybe have the staff or the committees figure out a way to make a process for submitting these requests that makes it so everyone knows that this is available and it's publicly documented that this money is given out and people have the access to that. I think that would be helpful, because as somebody who wasn't as active in the committees before, I didn't know that this money was available and I'd never seen it posted anywhere or publicly acknowledged that we were giving out these funds. So I think that would be a great step in transparency. I also was wondering if it would be possible for the funding of the events that are ongoing rather than the new events, if it was possible, since that's a COVID thing, if that could possibly come out of our COVID money that we're getting from the federal government as a funding source, rather than it coming from our budget, since it's not going to be an ongoing expense. It's going to be a one-time thing because of COVID and it's related to COVID. So I was hoping that that might be a possible funding source for that. So something to look into. That's it. And thank you so much for the report. It's great, all the level of detail, and it worked. Everyone worked really hard on it at the last meeting. So thank you so much.
It's a good meeting. Yes.
Great.
And then I know, because I see our city attorney, if there was some type of almost like a press release, notification that you guys could agree with, we'd be happy to, or I mean, probably from you guys, Explore Auburn's a great source to put that out there. And then, a lot of the social media, we have a lot of people in Auburn that would be looking at those. So that would be another place to possibly post those things.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Vice Mayor Amara's hand up.
Thank you. And I don't know why my hand's different color than everybody's. Anyway, Marjorie, thank you very much. The added detail is just wonderful. I really appreciate that. I would have to agree with Councilwoman Rachel Riddell Harris on a couple of things. If there could be some equitable way to get it out there so that it's out there. I don't know if it should be on our website, city website for application, or or some manner where it is not just by word of mouth, but and I think what you just addressed would help a lot as well. And also if we could use some of the COVID money, because apparently the increase that EDC is asking for is substantial. So I would like to look into that as well. And then finally, I guess my question also is, a lot of these events that are listed, well, not necessarily events, but some of the projects, I mean, are they not even in the planning stages, or are a lot of them going to take place the second half of the year? It would be my question to you. Like for instance, just one example I saw was like, for instance, the breakfast for the businesses. That's a pretty major project. And is that something that really will be realized this year?
So which one, I'm sorry, did you, were you?
Oh, I think there was a breakfast for the businesses.
I don't see a breakfast. We did do a business appreciation luncheon, and that's a.
That was it. I'm sorry. It's a luncheon.
So that was a list of projects and events that we had funded in the past.
Right.
So unless they came back and asked for a second grant, or in the case of the luncheon, the EDC did plan that with Mora Row, the top 100 businesses. That is not currently in the planning. It is something we could do. It was a kind of a special, I don't know about one time, but it was supposed to be a special thank you to the businesses to let them know the city appreciated them. And we could definitely do that again, since if this budget is approved, we could definitely do one again.
Was that considered when you wrote the budget? I guess that was my question.
So unfortunately for the events, we won't know until somebody sends an application in what specific event or project might be requesting money. The only one that we knew about that's in planning is the Home for the Holidays, which is in the budget separated. That is one we started last year, and we wanted to continue to do that, decorating the city hall. And then in the second area, they're spelled out specifically, mainly because we've been working on those items for about a year, and we have subcommittees for those currently, active subcommittees to make those happen if the budget is approved.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So for tonight, then we don't have to determine the amount. Is that correct? Then Mayor's book. Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions for Marjorie before we go to the public to see if we have any comments from the public? All right, seeing none. Amy, do we have any public comment on this item?
There is not public comment.
Thank you very much. Marjorie, thank you so much for the update and the much more detailed report. Greatly appreciated.
Right.
That's the end. Thank you. Have a great evening, Marjorie.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, next item on our shuffled agenda here, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, will be our first public hearing item, which is the general plan housing and safety element update. And I believe we have some consultants who worked on this for us here tonight.
Yep. Mayor and Council, why don't I lead off, and I will introduce the team from PlaceWorks to kind of step in. So Mayor and Council, tonight is actually a big night. There are items which are very meaningful within our overall planning, and tonight you get two of them, and that is the housing and safety elements. In California, all cities are required to have a general plan. There are 9 mandatory elements through the governor's office of planning, and what they require is that one of the elements, the housing element, is required to be periodically updated on an ongoing basis. Tonight, presented before you is what they call the 6th cycle housing element. And along with that, the state kind of hooked in that we also had to do the safety element, which hadn't been done since 1992. The city council's already heard this item before back in October, And at that time, you received what was really one of the critical path elements, which was approving a draft that could be submitted to the State Housing Community Development Agency for their review. The city has had a consultant on both the housing and safety elements. PlaceWorks, the lead consultant on that is Jennifer Gastelum. She and Cynthia Walsh and also Eli Crispy have been working on those. So why don't I turn it over to Jennifer, and she and her team will kind of lead you through tonight's items. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Jennifer?
Great, thank you. John, I'm going to share my screen, and then Cynthia and Eli and I are going to give you a quick overview presentation. So give me 1 second. Okay, so as the city manager shared an overview, tonight we are going to go over just the housing element and then the revisions that were made to the public review draft that, as the city manager mentioned, that you've already seen. The state required a few policy and program and background report changes. And then I will pass over to Eli to talk about the safety element and revisions, and then get to any questions that you all have. Just as a recap here on the schedule, so we prepared the admin draft starting in January. We had a stakeholder meeting that some of you participated in March, actually a week before the pandemic kind of shut everything down. So it's kind of nice reminiscing about what it was like when we had meetings back in your nice chambers there. So we had a public workshop there. Then we went forth through the heart of the pandemic and prepared the public review draft. And you saw that draft on October 12th. And that's subsequent to that, we had the document available for public comment from starting in after that meeting in October. And we submitted to HCD for the first 60-day review in November. And then because there are so many new state laws, the state asked for a few additional changes. So we did a second submittal just so that we could make sure that we got you the letter that you have, which is the conditional compliance letter from the state that says that you meet all of the statutory requirements of the housing element. And if you adopt the housing element, you will be in compliance for the next 8 years. Then also the safety element was submitted to CAL FIRE for a 90-day review. As you can see on the schedule, we had a call with HCD in January on the draft where we worked on those revisions and then further cleaned it up when we resubmitted it after that. We took the document last week to the Planning Commission for review and authorization, and we are here this evening. And so once it's adopted, then again, we submit it to HCD. You are in compliance upon adoption, and then it goes through the final review process for 90 days. And then you will again be done for the next 8-year period. So as John mentioned previously as well, the housing element is one of the 8 mandated elements of the general plan. And this is kind of unique in the fact that there is a specific planning process. The planning period is from 2021 through 2029. It was required to be adopted by May 15th. So we are a week or so late, but there is a grace period that goes through early September. So we are in the good graces of HCD right now with the conditional compliance and subsequent adoption. So the housing element is unique in the fact that it does include existing needs as well as we project out the needs for the next 8 years. There's a very large demographic section of the document. We do look at the land available to accommodate development. It is not the requirement of the city to build housing. It is a requirement of the city to identify land available to accommodate housing should the market produce it. And it is a requirement to show that there our goals, policies, and programs to help incentivize the development of housing. We also identify any constraints towards the development of housing. How much does it cost to build a house? How long does it take to process through the various departments at the city? Then we look at the previous 8-year housing element, and we look at the effectiveness of the programs and the appropriateness of continuing them forward. And that's kind of a checks and balances process. And that leads us to our policies and programs to meet the housing needs over the next 8-year period. What drives the housing element process is the regional housing needs allocation. So the state identifies a growth projection number for the next 8-year period. And then that number is then divvied out to the councils of governments, in our case, to the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. And then they put together a methodology to identify each city in the whole Sacramento region or each jurisdiction, the whole Sacramento region, and how many units they get. So you can see SACOG's growth number projection is a little over 117,000, and that then gets trickled down to the city of Auburn. So your number to be able to accommodate the RHNA is 310 units, and I'll show you what that looks like. So the job of the housing element is to identify land at varying densities, and there's no one size fits all approach here. So the first column is the 2021-2029 RHNA. That number adds up to 310. The way the state looks at this is that they divvy out these numbers by income category. So the very low and low income category, the responsibility of the city is to identify high density sites, meaning sites that would allow multifamily, 20 units an acre and above. The moderate income would be a medium dense product, potentially a duplex or small single family, and the above moderate is all of your basically single family homes. So the second column after the RHNA is projected ADUs, and that is accessory dwelling units. Accessory dwelling units being granny flats, second units, they are now officially called accessory dwelling units. So SACOG actually did some methodology to determine a formula for how many we can count based on how many the city is approving, and we can project out over the next 8 years. So that number of 91 is a projection of how many we realistically think are going to get produced over the next 8 years. Now, if the city approves more, you'll get more credit. So this is kind of an estimate. Then we look at what land is available that is vacant land, considered kind of infill development. And that's where we come up with the next column. And then the last two columns is the Baltimore Ravine specific plan and identifying what is planned for the Baltimore Ravine specific plan. And that's where we get to our numbers. Now, the last column is a surplus column. So you can see that if you add up the middle 4 columns, it shows and subtract it from the first column. You can see that we are identifying more than enough sites to meet your regional housing needs allocation. So, and that's okay to do that because we want to be able to allow you as a council to be able to approve projects that you want to see in the community. And that's why we want to make sure that you have enough options and that you're not forced into approving things that you might not want to approve in certain locations. So this land inventory gives you flexibility to meet your RHNA and to hopefully do good planning over the next 8-year period. I'm going to pass off to Cynthia to go through some of the revisions since the last draft that you saw that were requested by HCD.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So as a part of the update process, the housing element was submitted to HCD as previously mentioned. We submitted that on November 20th. This was for the first initial 60-day review period. Then in January, we had a call with HCD to go over their initial findings, and then we provided revisions to the draft to address those. After addressing the comments, the city did receive a findings letter on January 19th, which included additional revisions that needed to be included to meet state law. So then we did resubmit the document for a second 60-day review, and that was submitted on February 22nd. We then had another informal call where we addressed a few additional comments, clarification items with HCD. And then the city did receive a conditional compliance letter from HCD, as Jenny previously mentioned, stating that the draft meets the statutory requirements and once adopted will comply with housing element state law. Next slide. So the next few slides, I'll go over the revisions that were incorporated into the draft. So bear with me through these. So we did add policy 1.7. This is new state law for this cycle. And this is that any project that comes in that has a 20% affordability to it, it must be permitted by right. And this only applies to sites that were in the past 2 cycles. I believe there are 2 sites that this now applies to. I'd have to double check the number. Measure A, we revised to include the promotion of housing developments in the Baltimore Ravine specific plan and in the historic district design review districts. Measure E was revised to annually confirm with property owners their intent of renewal of the project affordability. Measure F was revised to expand the list of special needs populations and highlight that ongoing information would be provided to developers regarding incentives. Next slide. Measure G was revised to include expanded fair housing activities. Measure H was revised to coordinate with Placer County annually to identify funding resources to support emergency shelter programs. Measure I, we revised to include annual updates to the city's website to provide information on CEQA exemptions, expedited processing, as well as activities that would result in reduction of impact fees and objective design standards. Measure J was revised to meet with the Alta California Regional Center within 1 year to begin coordination on supporting housing for individuals with developmental disabilities. Next slide. Measure L was revised to comply with the Employee Housing Act and to update the definition of rooming and boarding to include single room occupancy units. Measure N was revised to develop and implement an ADU monitoring program because we are relying on ADUs to meet a portion of the lower income RHNA. We do need a program to show how we will monitor the affordability and the production of those units. Measure P is a new program. It states that the city will annually monitor the vacant land, again, ensuring that we have capacity to meet the RHNA the entire 8-year timeframe. Measure Q is also new, and this is to evaluate and remove barriers to housing production by monitoring policies, regulations, and procedures on an annual basis. So besides making edits to the policies and programs, we did make some changes to the background report. We included some new fair housing revisions, which was actually a pretty substantial analysis that we included on fair housing issues, including a discussion on displacement risk, patterns of discrimination, and access to opportunities. We also revised the land inventory and made edits to clarify the number and affordability of units in the Baltimore Ravine specific plan area and the phasing requirements that go along with that. We also included revisions for the affordability distribution of ADUs, and again, within the Baltimore Ravine specific plan. And we added a discussion on mitigation of environmental constraints through development. We also added a discussion on ADU permitting requirements and including that the city is currently in compliance with state law there. We clarified the time frame from project approval to issuance of a building permit, and the role of the design review process in discretionary review was included. Clarification on the reasonable accommodation procedure and required findings, and we included the city's definition of family. We added a comparison of Auburn's development standards to neighboring jurisdiction standards. We included a discussion of residential care facilities and their regulations. And we added a discussion on the agencies that provide water and sewer service and the anticipated capacity there. I believe I'm going to pass this over to Eli to kind of go over the safety element.
Yes, thank you, Cynthia. As you heard earlier, the state now requires that the safety element be reviewed and revised as needed every time the housing element is updated. And given the fact that the safety element is nearly 30 years old, there were a decent number of revisions that needed to be made. So we have revised the safety element to respond to a number of new state laws, including addressing and providing more detail on several key topics. We've included all new information around the hazard risks in and around Auburn, and we have updated the policies in the safety element in response to these new situations. So the updated safety element includes, as I mentioned, new and revised background information on all relevant hazard conditions and other public safety items. It includes a lot of new mapping. All the maps have been completely redone to identify areas that are prone to hazards and other critical information. We have introduced several new policies into the safety element, mostly in response to these new state requirements, as well as to some new best practices. We have carried forward some policies from the existing safety element where it made sense to do so, revising them accordingly. And we have also made sure that the updated safety element incorporates some recent planning documents. So the 2016 Local Hazard Mitigation Plan is now linked to the safety element, and the 2021 Local Hazard Mitigation Plan will be similarly linked when that is ready. We've integrated the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and we've also made sure that this ties to the Placer County Sustainability Plan, which was adopted last year. That plan is only for the unincorporated area, but it does provide a framework for some regional strategies in response to public safety and natural hazards. So we want to make sure that this safety element for Auburn is linked up with some of these broader countywide efforts. On the left, you see the topics that are in the existing safety element from the early 1990s. We have largely maintained those items, updating the information as appropriate. But we have also added in some new policies there on the right, or some new topics. And these are all in response to some of the changes in state law that I mentioned. The state now requires that the safety element address climate change related hazards, that it address populations and community assets that are uniquely susceptible to various hazards, and that it address evacuation constraints, looking at areas of the community where evacuations may prove challenging, as well as the primary evacuation routes in and around Auburn, and making sure that they can function properly and support community evacuation needs should that case arise. The next slide, please. The safety elements in fire-prone areas, which do include Auburn, are subject to review by CAL FIRE. So the safety element went before the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection back in December. The board was very pleased with the update. They had only one minor revision to one policy and an adjustment to one of the maps, so that was made. And then the Placer County Airport Land Use Commission wanted to make sure that the safety element was accurate in its descriptions of aircraft-related hazards, and that it wasn't conflicting with any of the policies around airport safety. So the Land Use Commission did review the element. They had a few revisions, and we have incorporated those. So the element is fully cleared for adoption. And with that, I will turn it back to Cynthia and Jennifer to wrap us up. Thank you.
Great. And to complement the housing element, safety element, we completed an addendum to the general plan EIR that is a legally defensible document. And because these are all just policy level changes, we're not looking at anything greater than that. That's why an addendum was completed. So that'll be something that you'll need to adopt with the housing element and safety element this evening. And with that, I have the recommendation. So that concludes our presentation, and we're open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Well done, PlaceWorks. Appreciate your efforts on behalf of the City of Auburn. We'll jump right into questions from council members. I see Councilman Berlant's hand up first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the safety element, all the maps that overlay the different natural disasters, all of them had city limits that are not matched up with our actual city limit boundaries. So I was curious if that's just an error or if there is a reason why it shows city limits well beyond what they actually are.
It may very well be showing the full sphere of influence for Auburn. But if there are specific concerns that you have, please pass those along and we can make sure those maps get revised.
Yeah, the sphere of influence, I pulled up the plan in one of the maps, and the sphere of influence is its own color and shows it there, but then it shows the city limits, and the city limits, do not match up with our actual city limits. So,
Dennis, do you have a page in the?
I'm just on page the safety element 10 or 239 of the staff report.
Thank you.
All of them, and there's multiple maps, and they're all the same, but it shows a dotted line for the city limits, which it shows the correct city limits, but then there's almost this addition that captures North Auburn and parts of Bowman. And I just want to make sure that we're getting that correct, because that could be perceived very poorly by our county officials and the county, since that's unincorporated.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. We can investigate that and make sure the maps are corrected in the final version.
Great. And then my second question is, the other thing I didn't see in here in the safety element in the fire hazard severity zone sections is any mention, and maybe I ask as a question of if I'm just missing it, but in our city, we've adopted, and I'm under the impression from our fire chief that the entire city outside of the 3 zones designated by CAL FIRE in 2007, that the city adopted the entire city limits as a wildland urban interface area, thus making under government code the very high fire hazard severity zone apply. But I don't see reference of that in our safety element. And to me, that would be a bit misleading to leave that out.
What we've put in here is what the state has identified as those zones, but we can certainly add mention of the city's actions to reflect what you're saying.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that we add that in, because that changes a lot of things and changes a lot of requirements. And we've had lots of discussions over the years, but I definitely think that the wildland urban interface designated areas by the council should be represented at least by mention in the safety element, if not at least in the maps. Otherwise, the average person going to the general plan is going to pull these maps up and think that only this small section is where the very high applies. And in reality, our wildland urban interface designated areas by government code apply equal to the very high. So those were my only 2 questions. I really appreciate the changes to the housing element too. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Councilman Berlant. Councilman Alice Bowden Calvillo has her hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. As a former planning commission chair, I was involved in this early on, so I've had the opportunity to participate and in numerous situations with regards to the data collection and so forth. So thank you very much. It's good to see the final draft at this point. I think it's important, and I know that you said this, and I wanted to thank you for it, but the RHNA numbers, what's really important for folks to understand, the public, is that these are numbers that are allocated to us through SACOG, through a state allocated process. And it doesn't require the city to build this housing. These are numbers that we're targeted to meet. We can help developers through a variety of different ways, but the city does not build, is not responsible for building the affordable housing for very low or for moderate income or what have you. It's really the developers that come in. Some folks get confused and think, okay, this is the set of numbers and the city now has to provide this affordable housing. And that's just not the case. So you did mention that. I just wanted to reiterate that because I think it's an important piece. The other thing I wanted just to touch upon is, again, we go through this process on a regular basis. We know that the housing element. And what happens when we don't reach our targets? You know, right now we're targeted to have for 2021 to 2029, 310 units. Again, you talked about 68 in very low, 41 in low, 60 in moderate, and 141 in above moderate. But if we don't reach those numbers, what really happens to the city?
Can I comment?
Yes, please
Oh,
answer.
okay.
I know, but I'd like you to, again, we have, the public is participating, it's a public hearing, but I just wanted you to touch upon that. I know what happens, but if you could please address that.
Sure. I wouldn't say there's a penalty per se. So you are meeting the intent of the law. You have identified the sites. The role of the community is to identify land at varying densities, as well as to show that you have programs and policies to help incentivize the development of housing. If you don't build it, you're not held to any sort of penalty. There is, I believe it's AB 35 that says that if you're not building your amount of units, then you have to allow for more, you have to allow more housing by right. And so that is the only, I guess I would say, I don't know that you call it a penalty or not, but it is the way that they are trying to link things to help with production.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I do appreciate that you're mentioning that. So that's with regard to the housing. I didn't really have any other questions on the housing element. Again, thank you. There's a tremendous amount of work. I went through all the documents, so I really do appreciate that. On the safety element piece, thank you, Councilman Berlant, for your comment about the city's designation of the entire city as a high fire severity, because that was something that I had noticed as well. But I did notice that in policies 2.7 and 7.2, we talk specifically about providing cooling centers and transportation to cooling centers and so forth for those extreme hot temperatures. I just wondered why we didn't talk about what happens on the opposite side when we have really cold temperatures. Maybe it doesn't happen enough, but we do work with the county and the state to provide cooling centers for those really high temperatures. I think it's more than 3 days of consecutive degree weather. But I just wondered why we didn't talk about it on the other side, on the extreme cold days.
Based on the review of the vulnerability and the hazards that we looked at, it seemed as though the extreme heat events were ones of greater concern than extreme cold. That's not to say that extreme cold cannot be a hazard. And if that is something that the council would like, I think it would be very easy and straightforward to amend those policies so that they apply to extreme temperatures at either end of the scale.
I think it just, shows that we're looking at both sides of the spectrum, that we're looking at both the cold and the heat. I don't know if we necessarily have to provide the shuttle, but I just think that it's being responsive to both issues. It may not be that we have a lot of those events, but I just like to have that completeness, if you will.
Certainly, we can note that.
And that was really it. That was all that I had. So thank you very much. Again, that's a tremendously, a great project, a great piece of work here. So thank you very much for all of your assistance.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the council? Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you for all your hard work on this. It's really great and something we desperately needed to update. So we really appreciate it. In regards to meeting our goal, I'm a little bit concerned about the ADU requirement for low income and making sure we meet that, because it's dependent on people deciding to build in their own yard. If we decided to meet those requirements in a different way, trying to transition commercial space to residential space or something else, is there any downside to us changing the plan midstream and doing something else and meeting those requirements in a different fashion?
I wouldn't recommend making changes to the document, but yes, every year staff has to report to HCD and through an annual housing progress report. And that's where you would say, opportunities for where you're meeting your RHNA. So yes, the ADUs is a projection. There is nothing to say that you can't meet those units in any other fashion as well. So there's no penalty there.
Great, thank you.
Great. I see Councilwoman or Vice Mayor Amara's hand up.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you. I read this thoroughly, and I really appreciate this housing element, especially. I think it's so important and critical that this gets updated. One thing with our RHNA numbers, I would think other than it helping a city to try and meet our goals, because it would help in terms of getting people off the streets, and having people not go onto the streets. But if we have places, it's for the betterment of each community. But with that being said, I heard you say that there's no penalty, but are there incentives then? And is there some sort of, so to speak, reward if you do meet your numbers?
I think having a compliant housing element is the goal, and that there are opportunities with a compliant housing element to pursue additional funding and work with other partners to help produce additional housing. So I would say that's how you can kind of pivot that into helping to create more housing opportunities. If getting this in compliance gives you then the opportunities to, to be able to, for example, you got SB2 funds. You couldn't have got SB2 funds if you didn't have a compliant housing element. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Councilmember Berlant's hand back up.
Yeah, Councilwoman Donna Calvillo was before me though.
Oh, thank you. Councilwoman?
Oh, thank you. I had a quick question, not really a question, but a quick comment. And I forgot to make it earlier, but I did notice that there are a lot of annual checks that need to happen every year from staff's perspective. So this is more kind of a comment for John, but I mean, we've got to check with the affordable housing, the various providers of affordable housing. Are within every 3 to 6 to 9 months? It's just a lot of checks. So do we have like a checklist that we keep on track? Because there's just so many different things. I didn't list them all out, but every time I turned around, there was another staff will check this, we'll check this, we'll check this. So do we have like a checklist, or how do you keep on top of that?
So specifically, I can tell you we're going through all the legislative review, because coming up with an annual checklist, there are some things that we do and will continue to do through the many different types of reports. We have to put together an annual housing report on various things. There are basic documents that we should be doing, which I'll be honest with you, I don't know if we've been doing them. Last year, pre-COVID, I think there were over 200 pieces of legislation in the Capitol that had to do with one topic, and that was housing. So this is something that we are absolutely going to have to pay attention to. We are going from what was a very paper-based process to a very data-based process. All of these numbers, everything is going to HCD. And the measuring stick is not going to be your good faith. It's going to be your actual production on various things. So we as a city are going to have to be funding this. One of the projects that I've given to our city senior planner is to go through that list of all of the housing legislation and come up with what we need to be doing. Because I like to call it the carrot and stick. The carrot from the state is whenever they give you money to start working on stuff, SB2, LEAP, REAP, all the fun stuff that is coming down, we'll call those the carrots. But the stick is how compliant are you? What are you eligible for? Probably the definition of a compliant housing element somewhere will change. So we need a checklist.
Just duly noted, it's a whole bunch of additional work. So on staff's plate, definitely. Thank you.
So I think that was a very good segue to the few questions I have for the PlaceWorks team. The non-compliance, the not meeting your RHNA allocations and actual units on the ground is what I'm concerned with. I've had a few constituents ask me about the question, if not Auburn, another jurisdiction is not doing what the state is expecting to be done. What is the ultimate ramification for that jurisdiction? Again, not Auburn, but other places. If they fail to deliver units, they fail to supply the funding resources that are available to communities to supply the uses. What does that worst case scenario look like from a small jurisdiction as it relates to their land use authority?
Well, I'll just throw out that under goal number one of the revisions that they added in was a requirement that there are certain density bonuses that are given if somebody provides 20% affordable units into their project. Well, what that is basically that's state policy which trumps your local land use authority. And that's what you're going to see happen. The state will take your local land use planning authority away from you by dictating that developers can come in. And the worst part about that is that it adds unpredictability. If somebody buys a piece of land, they know that they can jimmy up some project that will just be produced. It gets beyond your ability to plan for your community. And I think that's the most serious thing, is the idea that the state is going to incrementally be taking away your authority as the city council and the local community to do your projects. And that's the thing that we have to absolutely make sure doesn't happen. We want to keep our local land use authority. We want to be able to set the standards. We want to dictate things because once the state starts getting into your business on everything, it can literally be a Pandora's box that becomes a real problem for you.
John, thank you for that. I appreciate that response. That's sort of what my understanding was as well, but it's good to hear. It's good for the folks who are tuning in tonight to also hear and understand the importance of this process. So thank you, PlaceWorks team. I appreciate it. Amy Lynn, do we have any public comment on this item?
We did not receive any before the meeting, and I just checked the email live, and we did not receive any during the meeting either.
So we have a series of items before the council. I see Councilmember Lance hand back up.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to ask a follow-up question based on a comment, Jennifer, you made. You had made a recommendation, and maybe it was for that specific item, for us not to make a change. The items that I brought forward and that Councilwoman Dowden Calvillo brought forward as far as the extreme weather, will those be able to be modified? Should that be the will of this council, or was the recommendation holistic for the entire plan that don't make changes?
For the housing element, so I guess I would defer to your process of whether you need to make those changes in your recommendation to the safety element for adoption, however you want to handle that.
Yeah, if the council just, there are 3 resolutions up tonight. One of them is the safety element. And if you want to just add some caveat that staff include comments regarding extreme weather, very easily done.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion on the housing element. By resolution, I make a motion that we approve the general plan amendment adopting the City of Auburn 2021 to 2029 housing element.
I'll second.
Motion in a second. Any comment from the council? All right, Amy, please call roll, please.
Councilmember Berlant.
Aye.
Amara.
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Spokely.
Yes. Thank you very much. Do we have any other motion?
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion that we approve our general plan amendment for the City of Auburn safety element with the adjustments of ensuring that the map matches the city limit boundaries with the addition of the wildland urban interface areas in our fire hazard severity zone section and then with the addition of the extreme weather to include both heat as well as extreme cold.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Thank you. Amy Lynn, please call roll.
Councilmember Berlant,
Aye.
Amara,
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris,
Aye.
Mayor Spokely.
Yes. Thank you all. And any final motions?
I'll move by resolution that we adopt the addendum to the general plan environmental impact report for the general plan housing element and determine that the addendum is the appropriate level of documentation to satisfy the requirements of CEQA based on the determination that no new or substantially more severe impacts would result from the project, and the prior analysis contained in the certified general plan final EIR adequately addresses environmental impacts as authorized by CEQA guidelines section 1564B, and recommended that the city council determine the proposed amendments to the safety element are exempt from CEQA pursuant to state guidelines section 15061B3 common sense exemption.
I'll second that very long and lengthy one.
Way to go, Alice, for taking the long one. I appreciate that. Any comments, deliberation?
The only thing was, I think you just accidentally left out, it was section 15164B.
That's what I thought I was seconding.
All right, so we have a confirmation on the correction and the second. Amy Lynn, please call roll.
Councilmember Berlant,
Aye.
Amara,
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Riddell Harris,
Aye.
and Mayor Spokely.
Yes. I want to just take a quick second and thank our city staff for all of their hard work on this item. Obviously, this comes up every 8 years. It's a significant undertaking. We beat the statutory timeframes for getting this through and approved, and that's in large part due to not only staff, but our PlaceWorks consultant team that helped us get through this process. So thank you all for your hard work on this. We really appreciate getting this housing element and safety element update process behind us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, we're only 10 years behind on it.
All righty. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to, I think our final section on our agenda would be reports. John, do you have a city manager's update for us?
City Council, real quick, just so you know, I got the city's general plan. I think the maps that are shown are pretty close to our sphere of influence that were in there. I really couldn't do it, but the mayor, the maps that Councilmember Berlant pointed out, I think those are actually the sphere, which include Bowman in those areas. So just really quickly, a couple of items. So the comments about the goats. So not everybody likes the goats or the fire abatement. I'd like to, one of the blessings is I get to work right next to the fire department every day, and they get to, all the people that come in. I just want to call out the professionalism of our fire staff. Not everybody has been happy. And the fact that they are providing what I think is exceptional customer service and dealing with some folks that are maybe not as reasonable on everything. So kudos to the fire staff. We are almost exactly 1 month out from the Western States 100 Endurance Run that will be on June 26th. I will tell you that something big is going up in front of City Hall on Thursday. So I encourage you to drive by and gawk at our support of the Western States Run. I will tell you that we have one little hiccup that's come up. A couple of the streets in our overlay project this year have been freshly painted with new blue footsteps. That they're about ready to get a coating over some
overlay. Yeah.
So we are working on shuffling the schedule around a little bit. And I think that there's probably a good chance that some of us are going to be out repainting some of the efforts from the volunteers this weekend. So I'm
Hey, Daniel, do you hear that? We're going to be.
I'm ready to paint.
So I will share with you, dealing with the leadership of the Western states has been exceptional. They're wonderful people. That's our hiccup. So we're going to work through that. Final thing, the American Recovery Act. That's the stimulus coming down from the feds. The details are just trickling out like molasses on many of the uses of it. I can tell you that the Placer City Managers Group, we talked about it the other day. Good news is Placer County has somebody who's breaking it all down into just a couple of pages. So I'm going to get the Cliff Notes version. I will tell you that we will bring it back at least as an information item, probably not a decision item, at the second meeting in June. So that we can just get the council in the loop on it. We will deal with those funds completely separate from the budget. So if anybody has any heartburn about how we're going to put any of the money in, we just have to work on it. My understanding is that we're going to have to file some things by August. So if anything, we'll bring it to the council probably in 3 consecutive meetings. In June, 1 in June and 2 in July to meet any federal guidelines on whatever we have to do. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate it. Rachel, I see your hand up.
I talked to you before about some cities don't necessarily have a full schedule all summer long. Is that, do we have city council meetings 2 times a month through the whole summer? Is that the plan?
Yeah, I honestly, I'll play my new guy card.
Yeah, I'm a new guy too. I'm just
but I don't know if the council's ever blacked out any meetings. I know that a lot of them do. I would throw that up to the council as far as things go. But right now, we have the full meeting scheduled unless the council wanted to take off a meeting. Probably, if I was going to suggest anything, I would probably take off the latter part of August.
Yeah, no, we historically have not done that. Not opposed to entertaining that idea of making any adjustments, but you've seen the last few meetings. We've got very lengthy agendas, and we've got lots of business ahead of us. So again, I'm open to the conversation if the council would like to entertain that, but historically that's not been the case. Obviously in December, we run into situations where we, cancel our second meeting and we have the special meetings with the reorg, but that's not been a past practice by the previous councils.
I'd be open to considering it. I think our city manager needs a break, and it probably is a good idea for all of us, perhaps. But just throwing that out. I know it's not on our agenda right now.
Well, why don't we give that some thought, John, and maybe a proposal can be brought back. Again, I do think the council business doesn't get summers off, and there's lots of things that come at us pretty quickly. So I prefer to keep regular agendas versus having special meetings like we talked about at the beginning of this meeting, if at all possible. But again, things come up. So why don't we have this on our next agenda to have a conversation about it with the whole council, so we can talk about possibly making some summer recess adjustments.
Very good. I will do.
Thank you, John. Any other questions? Oh, so any other questions for John, the city manager? Let's jump into city council committee reports, and I'm going to just work around my screen here and start at the upper left with Mr. Berlant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Greater Auburn Fire Safe Council met on Friday. We discussed the similar topic that this council discussed, which was the Bureau of Reclamation's Auburn fuel plan. The fire chief and myself gave an overview of the ongoing discussions, and the council decided that they would wait and take the city fire chief's lead on when it is appropriate for the Fire Safe Council to provide public comment and or pressure onto the Bureau of Reclamation. And just a update on that, the fire chief is waiting a few more weeks to hopefully get an internal decision on the environmental review that will or will not have to be done based on their plan. If their plan requires a full NEPA review, it's down this whole nother track and likely to be a whole nother set of excuses on why they won't be able to fund any work in the canyon. If it internally is decided they can do it and don't need to go out to NEPA, then the plan can move forward, and our public comment immediately thereafter to try to put that pressure. So the Fire Safe Council had that discussion. I also represent the Fire Safe Council on the county's core team. The county is building their updated community wildfire protection plan. So I am working with the Fire Safe Council and with the fire chief to update our specific fire reduction projects that will go into the plan. It's just a planning document that allows the city, the fire chief, the Fire Safe Council, or any other group to point back to it in order to get grants and whatnot. So that will be a good thing, and it's a updated plan, and so making sure we have updated items in there. So if any of you think of anything that the fire chief and the Fire Safe Council hasn't thought about, let me know, and I will help make sure that that gets into the drafted plan for the greater Auburn area. With that, that's the only, I did, the months start to get together. I think we had a meeting. I didn't report out. I did attend the governance committee for the Auburn Chamber of Commerce. Lots of discussion there on whether or not the Chamber of Commerce was going to endorse the proposal for the Western States and the Tevis to be known as the Endurance event of California. There's a lot of hesitation in that group, and so we'll see if that item does move forward. And then, of course, the other discussion item, just to piggyback on what we just talked about, which was the fire risk and the Bureau of Reclamation's work. And so the governance committee is likely also going to take a position on that, and not sure when they'll discuss that further, but that was an item they too wanted to continue to discuss. So with that, end of report.
Thank you very much, Councilman Berlant. I'm going to move over to Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you. Mainly the committees that I was on this week or over the last few weeks have been talking about their budgets and the different events that they're working on. The Economic Development Committee, which I know you're on as well, they've been mainly talking about the budget and talking about different activities, like there's some fun things that they're planning around 48 hours in Auburn and other kind of fun economic development tourism activities to bring some people into Auburn. And we've been discussing that kind of on an ongoing basis, different, we've been kind of dividing and conquering and having smaller groups work on things. In regards to the Arts Commission, there's a lot of fun things planned for this summer that are kind of in the works. There's a Shakespeare in the Park that's planned. There's a lot of fun music events that we talked a lot about the umbrellas. We're going to be painting more utility boxes. There's all kinds of interesting things. Everyone's very excited to be able to get out and enjoy the city and enjoy our art and put new pieces of art into the community. So there's a lot of those that have been in the works for a while that are finally coming to fruition after COVID. And so that's mainly what we've been talking about, is all of the different fun things that have been in the works for a long time and are finally coming to pass. So that's about it.
Great, thank you very much, Councilwoman Dowden-Cavill.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 different committees to report on. With regards to Pioneer Energy Governing Board of Directors, Councilwoman Riddell Harris had mentioned this, but we expect that in June or July, we're going to have a rollout announcement with regards to the green 100% renewable rate. So expect to see that coming out soon. Also wanted to let you know that we adopted a community programs advisory committee to really look at the various programs that we might be able to offer our clientele. So we'll be busy working in that particular endeavor. We're actually also in our strategic planning mode right now. We had last week, not only did we have a meeting, but we also had a strategic planning session. And we'll have another one this week. So to conclude, so that they've been very helpful working with the professionals that are leading us down the right path. So lots of things happening on that particular end. Also wanted to report out with the Auburn Endurance Capital of the World Committee. Very excited because we have some endurance events that are happening. We know our mayor attended the American River 50 run. We had the ride. There was a foot race just out last weekend. I saw the flags for that. We have, I think it's last man standing in Auburn. They're going to have a race that does a 6-mile run starting in Cool, runs down to basically no hands and then up the training hill. And you have an hour and 45 minutes to do that. So they're going to see the person who wins is the person who's out there the longest, essentially. So that'll be, I'm not doing that. John, maybe you're going to be out there.
Come on, Alice, you and I are going to do this thing.
I'll win for the elected official.
That's right. You'll do the elected official. I'll do it for the city manager thing. But come on, Alice, you and me, let's see if we can't, let's get at least 5 laps in.
Oh yeah, 5 laps. Anyway, so lots of great events going on. Very excited to have endurance activities back in the city limits. Also just wanted to give you a heads up that we are working on a sign for in front of City Hall, that basically a welcome to Auburn, California, with our logo on it, the Endurance Capital logo, just welcoming folks. And here is a copy. You can't really read the text, but you can just get the gist of it. But this is basically what we're looking to have a metal sign placed in front of City Hall so folks can see that we are, of course, the endurance capital of the world. And last, I just want to report out from the Auburn Theater. And with regards to activities there, they also are very excited now that some of the restrictions are lessening and looking forward to opening up for more events and so forth. One thing we can expect to see is actually an application from the Auburn State Theater Board of Directors to declare the Auburn State Theater a historic building, just for Auburn, the city of Auburn's purposes, not asking for state or federal designation, but simply the city's designation. And so that will be going before the Historic Design Review Commission at some point. They just voted to move forward with that application. And really it's, every building that's within our historic, downtown and old town are within the Historic Design Review jurisdiction. So it's mostly just something they can use for marketing purposes. The historic Auburn State Theater, it's been designated historic by the city of Auburn. So, I don't want to give away too much because I know that they'll be rolling out announcements for events, but they did have movies at the Station House. I think it was Alfred Hitchcock's Rope. I think they just played that last Thursday. And so there are additional movies that are coming out. So good things on that front. And with regards to Shaq, we meet this week. So I don't have anything to report on that one. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice. Councilwoman Amara.
So the Sustainability Committee had a meeting, and they will be coming to the council to ask for to expand the committee for another at-large position. We've had a lot of interest, and the committee didn't have the heart to say no to many of the fine candidates. So that's coming up soon. Also, there was a, they talked about the budget, and they'll be coming forward with a more expanded, detailed budget. Also, working on a web page, and they're working very seriously on the trees on High Street. They formed an ad hoc committee with the DBA and a couple other groups, And then, as I said, there'll be a web development, kind of an interactive web page that'll really help and be put up on our city website. Then I was also, I am going to, I'm part of the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority. I'm an alternate there, so I will be attending that. Just getting some information. You probably all know that we have the state is very focused on this, and there's going to be a lot of monies coming down. For example, 1.4 billion for zero emission buses and trucks, 407 million for zero emissions rail and transit equipment, 1 billion for transit. The list goes on. So it's a fun committee to be a part of right now. A lot of money, a lot of support by the state. Then we also, I help facilitate with Supervisor Gustafson a Zoom workshop for PCT, PA, and we had quite a good turnout, a lot of good input, and I think Rachel was there, which I appreciated, and it was just a fun time to have. It was quite interactive, and it was a very good presentation, and we have a lot of good things going on that they spoke about in each of the areas in our county. So that's all I have to report. We will be having a meeting for that coming up on Wednesday. So I'll let you know more later.
Great, thank you very much. And I'll be brief. I did get to work closely with Marguerite on the EDC budgets. So that was a fun process. She did an incredible job, and the EDC staff, EDC volunteers did a great job with that. I also had a SACOG board meeting. We had many different items, but the one item that kind of rose to the top of everybody's attention was the recognition for Matt Carpenter's retirement. He has been a mainstay at SACOG for over 20 years, and he's retiring and moving on to other opportunities. So he'll be a huge loss. He's the guy that's, I'm not going to guess what the total number of state and federal dollars that he's kind of overseeing the allocation in our region for, but it's many, many hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars that he's kind of overseeing as far as getting down to local jurisdictions for federal and state funded projects. So Matt will be missed. It was a very long series of congratulations, and I think we even got to a point where somebody recommended a motion to deny his resolution honoring him, so maybe he would stay. But it was a well-received congratulations to Matt for all his hard work at the SACOG board, or at SACOG, to support all of the work being done there. And that I do want to make one other quick comment, and we talked about this briefly throughout the meeting, but seeing the different events. I mean, last week we had cruise night, we had the co-op, we had last week we had the home show. Seeing everything opening back up, and all of the support from the community has just been fantastic. I think it just tells me that folks are really dying to kind of get back to a sense of normalcy, and the fact that our businesses and our business districts and our community is so supportive of that is just a fantastic thing. So thank you all on the council for attending all these events. I know there's many, and we get to the ones we can, but I'm just excited for our city to see everything kind of opening back up and things, I guess, getting a little closer to what I would call normal. So congratulations, City of Auburn. It's been fantastic to watch and can't wait to get out to more events. So that is my quick update. And unless we have anything more, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting tonight. Thank you all for your time, and we'll